Hello everyone, it's dragonplatinum here, and today we are back again with yet another Plane Crazy video. Now today we're doing something a little bit different, and it's a video that I've had planned for about 2 months, and I just haven't got around to doing it. But today we're going to be doing a parts tier list. Now, I don't know if you noticed the trend on YouTube, but a while ago there was a trend where people were doing a bunch of tier lists, and I thought it'd be kind of a fun thing to do for a tier list for Plane Crazy, where we take all the blocks and we rate them, or at least I'm going to rate them, and then you guys can let me know down in the comments if you think I was kind of close, or maybe there was some things that I rated wrong. But before we get into that, I just want to quickly say that if you are not subscribed, we are currently heading towards 20,000 subscribers before the end of the year as a milestone goal. So hey, if you wouldn't mind, go down, hit that red subscribe button. It's free. You can always unsubscribe if you do not like the content later down the line, but it really supports me, and every day we're getting a little bit closer to that goal, so that'd be really awesome to see if we can actually reach it. But now, without further ado, let's get into our video, and this should be pretty easy actually. What are we going to start with? I guess we should start with blocks. Now, I'm not going to really specialize, I'm not going to go through like each block because they're pretty much all the same, they do the same thing. So we're going to put the normal block probably an S tier. I'm going to give the normal block S tier because it's basically used for pretty much everything. Like, you can never go wrong with a normal block. I don't think there's anything that a normal block can't really do, and like, it's a pretty necessary thing. I'm also going to add in the 0.9 block in S tier because I feel like it fills a particular niche, and it does it really well with just that tiny little bit of clearance room, which is perfect for whenever you're doing maybe some motor locking, or if you're using landing gear and you just need to fit the wheels in somewhere. It just fits it perfectly, and it does the job well. Obviously not the greatest building block if you're just trying to make something, but when you need it in those specific situations, it is so useful. I'm also going to put the paint block into A, and I guess I can show off its feature. If you can see, with the paint block, you can actually paint multiple sides of it. Not always extremely useful. Again, in some cases, it's got a niche use. However, I feel this one isn't as useful as the normal block. Some could argue that it is, and I think that's just a matter of personal opinion. Alright, so next we have the wedges. Now, if I'm going to be honest, I think that all the wedges are pretty good. Like, they're, for the most part, even though I complain about us not having enough wedges, they're actually pretty decent. And I think probably the worst wedge, in my opinion, the one I have seen the least, the one I use the least, is probably the corner wedge. And we're going to put this guy all the way down in C tier, because I just feel that it doesn't get used a whole lot. Sure, it fills a couple scenarios, but like, I just rarely ever see it, and I don't know. Not a huge fan of the corner wedge. Half wedge, on the other hand, I think can be pretty cool. When used in the right situation, I think the half wedge can be very useful. I could put it in A tier, but why is there smoke pipes on my tier list? Yeah, I could put it in A tier, but I think we're gonna go with B tier on this one. It almost hurts to say that, but I just feel like, I don't know, I guess I could put it in A tier. Like, it is a really useful block. Yeah, you know what, we'll give the half wedge, we'll put that in A tier. I think it belongs in A tier. Okay, so next up we have the inner wedge. Now, this is something that I've tried to use in a couple builds, never really works out. I don't really know what kind of situations you would ever need it in. Again, another block I rarely ever see used, so I think we're going to throw this one down into E tier. It's not complete garbage, but it's just really not that useful. Pyramid wedge. This one is used a lot for capping things off. Again, not probably the best block as in terms for normal building, but it's usually used for like maybe capping off like the front of a plane nose or something like that. So I'm gonna give it a B tier because it is useful, just not as useful as maybe paint blocks, half wedges, or even normal blocks. Now the triangle wedge. This one, in my opinion, is actually extremely useful. I have used it so many times, And when I actually began using it, I felt like a whole new world had opened up, and it made builds so much smoother. I think it's also a lot better than its counterpart, the half triangle wedge in half blocks. That one just doesn't fill the role too well all the time, but this one works well, and has worked well for me a lot of times, so I think it definitely deserves S tier. Classic wedge. I'll give it an A tier. I think that it does its job, and it does its job well, but that's about it. That also goes for all of the 1x2, 1x3, and 1x4 wedges. I think they all probably deserve A tier, and the same with the wedge beam. Now on to wedges 2 with the left corner wedge. This one, I don't think I've used it a whole lot. Maybe for a couple builds. Again, something kinda niche, not used a whole lot. So I think I'm gonna put this one in D tier. I just don't see it used a whole lot, and for the most part, I tend to go towards like triangle wedge blocks and stuff before I ever try to touch corner wedges, so I think I'm going to put it in D tier. Now the round wedge in. I have literally never gotten this thing to work in a build for me at all. I don't know if you have. I'm sure there's some situations out there where you can get it to work, but I'm sorry, this one is going straight into trash tier. I've just never seen it used properly. Maybe it could be used for an intake, but even at that point you could probably use wedges to pull it off even better, so round wedge in, not very good. Round wedge out, on the other hand, again, kind of niche. I think that this one probably could go in C tier. I've seen it on a lot more builds than I have with the round wedge in. Still not a terribly amazing block, but definitely not trash compared to its counterpart. As far as the bigger triangle wedges go, they're still going to go up in S tier because, again, pretty much the same thing. Wedge block. These things are a godsend. I love them. I use them all the time. They work amazingly well, and they hands down deserve S tier. They are an amazing block to have in your kit, and if you're not using them, I suggest using them because they just work so well at making things look smooth, rounded, and just nice. And like, it just makes it look good. Alright, half blocks. As far as half blocks go, I don't use them all the time, but when I do use them, they do work pretty well. So I'll put them in A tier. I think they're a pretty good block. I don't think... Well, I could give them S tier because they do fill like a really important role. And I did give it to... Okay, you know what? We're gonna switch it around. We're gonna put it into S tier. I think half blocks are really useful, and they can be used on a whole bunch of builds, especially if you're wanting to add more detail but make it smaller. So yeah, I think half blocks deserve S tier. Half block wedge. This one, I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with it. I've used it a few times. I'm not gonna say it's the best block out there by any means, but I think it does, it's kind of like the pyramid wedge. It fills a very specific role for very specific things, and I don't think I could give it any higher than B tier in my opinion. Half corner wedge down. Yeah, this one, I've used it before, but I don't know. I rarely ever use it. I hardly ever see it used. So I think I'm just going to throw it in C tier along with its 1x1 counterpart because, sure, it's half, but it's pretty much the same thing. Half triangle wedges. They're like the half triangle wedge, obviously. I think they're a little bit worse because I don't find uses for them all too often because I don't use half blocks all that often either. They are a good block, I will say that. I could either give them A tier or S tier, but I think I'm going to go with A tier on this one just because they're not used as often as I think normal triangle wedges are. So I think I'm going to put them in A tier. The half wedge. Okay, I'm actually a really big fan of this block. I use it quite a bit. Should I use it a lot? I don't know. I'd honestly take this one over the half triangle wedge pretty much any day. And especially over this half triangle block here, it just works a lot better in my opinion. So I think I'm going to put it in A tier as well. It's a really good block, but I don't think it's one of the best ones out there. Half Wedge 2. Now this block is actually like probably one of my favorite looking blocks. I don't get to use it all the time because it only fills really specific needs, but I think it's a really cool block overall. I guess, like I said, it's not exactly the most useful block in the world, so I think I'm going to give it a D tier. Still better than the block we've got here. I forget what this one was, but that's how little that this one is used. I think it's better than that one. Still not used a whole lot, but still a good block in my opinion. Alright, half wedge down. You know what? I think I might switch a few things around here. I think I might move the wedge up to S tier and put the half wedge down in A tier, because wedges, you need them a lot. Half wedges, not so much. So, yeah, that's my reasoning. Alright, helium blocks. These things are usually used when you're trying to like balance things out. I've used them a few times, especially for like my camera drone. I try my best not to use them when building planes now, because when I mess around with the gravity, because I like to do that, it does mess up the build a little bit. I don't think they're as good as some people might think that they are. I think they're a good block. I don't think they're the best block. I think that they probably belong in B tier. Don't get me wrong, I like them, but I would rather use ballast blocks and put more power into whatever I'm building. Unless I'm building something small, then maybe in that situation I would use a helium block, but I think ballast blocks are just way too good and much better than trying to use a helium block. Alright, we've got lights. I'm gonna actually just kind of pretty much group these all together. They all do the same function. Wing lights are a little bit special, so I'll put them in A tier because, you know, we'll just group them all together. They do the same thing. We can put all the lights in S tier because they're the only lights that we have. So, you know what? I'll just put the wing light on top of it. They're the only lights that we have, and that's the only reason that they're gonna get S tier. I do feel that lights are actually really underused in Plane Crazy. I see a lot of builds without lights, and honestly that's kind of sad. I think lights look good on builds, and I would like to see more people using lights, including myself. I should really start to use more lights. Skis. Okay, so this is from the Christmas event, which I think may be coming back soon. I'm not sure. I don't have all the Christmas items, so I can't say exactly what is all in here, but I've never used the skis. Ever. Never seen anybody use the skis. Don't know what they're used for. F tier immediately. Maybe they're useful for like 2 or 3 builds, but other than that, I don't think anybody uses skis. Alright, next up we got balls. Contain your laughter, we gotta get through this. As far as balls... okay, this is gonna be hard. As far as balls go, I've never actually seen anybody really use, like, them other than the explosive variant for, like, bombing. So, like, maybe I'd put the half ball at, like, a C tier, maybe. But as far as the full ball goes, I'm gonna have to put it in, like, E tier. There's really not a whole lot of uses for it. Alright, next up we got cylinders. These are really good blocks. I use them for building and for motor locking. They're just super useful, and I think it would be a crime if I put them anywhere other than S tier, because that is what they deserve. Now, as far as half cylinders go, I'll put them in A tier because I just really don't use them as much. And I guess I would also count for like literally every single half cylinder and cylinder that is here. All the big cylinders go in S tier, all the half cylinders I'll put in A tier. Pontoons. Probably one of the most unused blocks in this game. When they first came out, when I made my video so long ago when I unlocked them, I thought that they'd be very useful, and I thought they would have properties like being able to float. From testing, does not seem that way. They are pretty useless. You can use them in very, very, very limited builds. Like, I can't even think of too many builds you would use the pontoons for. Maybe a jet ski if you're making it small enough, because like even the big ones, they don't give you a whole lot of room to work with. So like I could put it in F tier, and I don't want to do that, so I'll put it in E tier. It's not great, but it's not trash either, I guess. Alright, stairs are next. I've only actually recently used stairs for my battleship build. Never really used them before that. I guess I used them for the bus as well, but I don't see them used a whole lot. Mostly just for like bases and stuff. It's just another situation of they fill a niche, they do their job, and that's pretty much all they do. They don't do anything special other than just be stairs. So for that, I'm probably going to have to put them in B tier, and that'll go for all of them because they all do pretty much the same thing, and I can't see you using turn left or turn right for any building applications, so yeah. Stairs will be B tier. Friction block. Literally never used it. Don't know what it does. F tier. Trash. Ladders. These things are good for railings, they're good for detailing. I've seen them used in a lot of different ways. I don't think that they're an S tier block, and I don't think that they're an A tier block either, but I do think that they're a solid B tier block, if not bordering on A tier. Really useful and can be used in a lot of situations, just not necessary all the time. But when they are used, they look really good. Alright, this is going to be an easy one. Wing panels. Wing panels go immediate S tier. They're literally the only wings in the game. You need them. If you don't have them, you're not going to be flying very well. You're not playing crazy unless you got wings, so S tier. Alright, I think I might put Delta Wings also in S tier. They work. And again, they're really good for making wings look good. If I were to make a suggestion, I would really love for there to be like more curved kind of bits of wing panel that we could use to corner off wings and make it look a little bit smoother. But for now, Delta Wings do the job. If those imaginary wing panels that I just came up with ever come into actual existence, these guys are probably going to drop down to A tier because I don't know. Maybe they'll stay S tier. I think they're useful. They're important. So I'll stop talking. I guess they belong in S tier. Okay, control surfaces. I kind of want to put them in A tier because when they go on builds, they do not look very good. Especially if you're using a lot, they're not great. Especially if you're also trying to turn fast. Unless you're doing the glitched camera thing where you can basically turn on a dime, they're not great. I guess I could give them S tier because they are useful and they are an important block, and with glitch camera they're insanely good. So yeah, I guess I'll give them S tier. However, Delta control surface, you, my friend, are going all the way down into E tier. I have used you once, and that's about it. Propeller blades. These are basically just wing panels, but kind of canted. That's about it. They are important. They're really good for building propeller planes, helicopters, you name it, they can do it. So obviously I believe they do deserve S tier, just because they fill a role that nothing else really does. You could, in theory, just take wing panels and use motors to turn them and make that, but why would you do that when you just have propellers? It doesn't make any sense, so that's why I think that they belong in S tier. Also, let's take a quick look. We do have a lot of blocks in S tier, because I guess a lot of things are extremely useful in this game. So good on the developers for making things that are important. But as far as trails go, I'll put that in B tier because they're cool. I think they're cool, but not the most useful thing out there. Jet engines. I think that these bad boys probably belong in A tier. The reason for this is I think that rocket engines are more powerful. Now, I haven't tested this. This is just off of me thinking that it's a thing. but I'm pretty sure that things like the Super Rocket Engine are just so much more powerful, and even though they take up the same amount of space, you might as well go with the Super Rocket Engine. The only downside of it is that it makes a lot more noise, so I think that's why the Super Rocket Engine is probably going to end up in S tier, while the Jet Engine is going to end up in A tier. Fuel tanks. Pretty useless. Nobody uses them. Like, there's very, very, very few people out there that use them. I've actually never met somebody who actively uses fuel tanks. I had to make challenges specifically for using fuel tanks, so I guess if you want a challenge, yeah, use fuel tanks, but other than that, I'm pretty sure I don't want to give them F tier. You know, we'll give them E tier. They're not great, but if you do want that challenge, it is there. You can use it, but for the most part, nobody uses it. Water propellers. These things work fine, I guess. I don't like them. Do prefer my rocket engines and stuff, but if you're in the water, you need to use them, so that's why they're going in S tier. Alright, on to propellers. Small propeller engines, one of the most broken things in this game. I love using them. They're great for pretty much everything. You can stuff them into tiny spaces and get like tons of control out of them. I think that if I were to like put the other propellers on here, I'd probably put like the bigger propeller engines like much farther down on the list, but I'm just gonna group them all together for now. So yeah, small propeller engine, S tier. The bigger ones I'd probably put in D tier. Actually, you know what? I'll put them in D tier because they don't deserve to spend the limelight with the small propeller engine. They belong in D tier. They are not very good. Okay, wheels. A lot of people hate these. They hate the design, and to be honest, I actually don't agree. I am kind of a big fan of the rim, but I also do agree that the cylinder wheels look a lot better. So I'll probably put these things down in C tier. Useful, but ugly. That's pretty much the motto with them. Water wheel. I've seen this thing used like twice on builds, maybe. And I've also seen it used for like a really weird gear contraption. But other than that, there's really not too many uses for it. I could put it in F tier, I honestly could. But I think E tier is probably where it belongs. Hover thrusters. Another one of the most broken things in the game. Hover drive engines are insanely quick. You can use hover drives for helicopter blades, hover drive engines, just hovering, multiple other vehicles. They're extremely useful. You can use it for detailing. They're just a jack of all trades. I think they're a really good block to use, and they just work so well. Probably one of the fastest blocks you can use in the game, next to, I think, Conveyor Engines. But, yeah, they're really good. Train wheels. I think they're ugly. I do honestly think that train wheels are ugly. Not a big fan of them, personally. But if you want to use them, you can use them. Probably be better off making your own custom train wheels. But these ones do work. I've used them before. I just don't think they're great. I've never seen them used terribly well, so I'll put it in D tier for now. Alright, on to ballast blocks. I love ballast blocks. I think they are so much better than helium blocks because they do help you actually balance out your builds and make them work so much better. This also goes for ballast beams if you need like more space, obviously. And as far as ballast tanks go, also going to go in S tier because you need them for submarines. That's pretty much the only thing you can use unless you want to try to cram a bunch of rockets into a submarine to force it underwater. But that's probably never a good idea, so yeah. Ballast block and ballast tank will both go in S tier. Okay, PvP weapons. First up, the cutter. There's a reason I banned this from basically every single one of my build battles. It is busted. It is one of the most busted, like, PvP weapons in this game. I've never seen them, I've never used them, but I have heard of shredder bugs. And apparently they are these really fast, really small things that fly around with a whole bunch of cutters strapped on, and they just shred anything in their path. That is why cutters are so insanely broken, and they will go in S tier. even though they are disgusting, but they're just so strong that like they are the definitive PvP weapon. If you just want pure chaos, you want to use a cutter. Explosive ball. I've seen these used before on a couple bomber designs. They do cause a little bit of lag, and from what I've seen, when people are actually trying to fly the planes, they kind of tend to glitch out the back. Not the most stable thing to use in the world, so I am probably going to put it in C tier, mostly because I'm not a huge fan of them. They do work, again, specific situations, you can use them, but in my opinion, just use explosive blocks and like motor lock them together. It works much better. Now on to the actual explosive block, which I will give S tier. Not only can you use it for PvP, but you can also use it for armor, which is insanely broken because nothing can actually destroy it. So, like, again, another thing I banned from my build battles because it's just so good. Like, it gets you S tier. Gun goes in S tier. Literally the only gun in this game. One thing that I do wish that you could actually do is if you could recolor like the little yellow part, and you could just recolor it to whatever color you want your bullets to be. I think that'd be kind of a cool feature. But yeah, like I said, it's the only gun in the game, so of course it's going to get S tier. That also works with the rocket, because it is also one of the only homing rockets that you don't have to like custom build. So those two, easy S tiers, pretty obvious. Lava Spitter. It works. It is an extremely destructive weapon when it hits. Keyword, when it hits. You have to get really close with this thing, and for the most part, you only got two. Oh, that's another thing. You've only got two of them. You're better off using rockets, or TNT, or guns, or pretty much anything else. I don't think it's the worst PvP weapon, but it certainly is not the best, and that is why it's going to go into D tier. Water jets. Utter trash. Mostly just a meme weapon because you can push people around. That's all I gotta say about it. It's probably one of the most useless weapons out there. Easy F tier. Next up we have the motor. S tier. Just immediate S tier. Nothing else to say about that. Motor 2 also gets S tier. Motors are broken. You can do so many things with them. Before I knew about using motors, my builds were so like big and bulky and blocky. Nowadays, with motor locking, you can do so much more different stuff. You can make things condensed. You can make such cool things. Obviously, I'm still learning, but like the things that I've seen, motors are probably the best block in this game, hands down. Nothing else competes with it. Pistons. These two will count together, half piston and piston. Very niche. I've seen it used for doors, and I did use it on my rescue helicopter, although I don't think that it really gets used a whole lot. I'll give it, you know what, I'll give it C tier. Middle of the pack. Not the best thing out there, not the worst thing either. Does only one role, and it does it fine, so I can't hate on it for that. So yeah, probably just a C tier. Alright, next up we have conveyors. Now I don't know a whole lot about these. I don't really use them. I do, however, know about conveyor engines and how insanely fast you can go with those. So just because of that, I'm going to put it in S tier because it's one of like the fastest blocks in the game if you can like do the setup for it. It's just really good. I don't know if conveyor wedge works the same way, but I do kind of like using it as like intakes because I think it looks nice, but that's not going to save it from being all the way down here in E tier. I just don't think it's that useful. It's too niche and doesn't have a whole lot of uses. Alright, suspension. It works sometimes. I'm not very good with it, and this is going to be my own personal bias coming in. It works. I don't want to give it S tier because I don't think it's that good, but I'll give it A tier because, again, it has something that nothing else has, so that's the reason why it gets A tier. Alright, so next up we have landing gear. This, again, is something that works, but you can make much better stuff with just doing custom things. I've used it on occasion, especially when I run out of room and I can't use custom things, but I also think it's a situation with the wheel where, you know, I'm not going to do that to the landing gear. I'm going to put it in B tier. It's good. It just doesn't look as good as some of the custom stuff you can make, but it is still extremely effective and a good thing for new players, a good thing for small builds, and just generally really useful in certain situations where you can't make custom landing gear. Disconnectors. I actually really like disconnectors. I like using them as just for like the end block part here, because it's like the thinnest block in the game. So that's pretty much why they're going here. I mean, I guess the disconnection function is also kind of nice, but yeah, easy S tier, not a whole lot to debate there. Alright, next up we got magnet. I don't know a whole lot about magnet. I'm going to be completely honest, since this is my tier list, I'm going to put this where I think it belongs. I don't know anything about the magnet. I've never used it. I don't think I've ever seen anybody else use it. I don't know what it does, and maybe I should probably try something out with it eventually, but for now, I'm going to put it in F tier because I just... And this is my fault, I totally accept the blame for that, but I do not know what this block is for, where it could be used, or what it really does. I'm assuming it attracts another magnet block together, but like, I don't know when that's ever going to be useful. Alright, the rope block is going to go in S tier because it is extremely useful, and again, another situation of it's the only block that does what it does, so it just gets lucky and gets into S tier pretty much for free. Anchored block. I don't really use it that often. I don't know why you would want to use it other than if you're making a ship, because really you shouldn't need to anchor midair with a plane or anchor with a tank. The only like reason I use anchor blocks is for thumbnails, for when I'm taking pictures, but yeah, I'll put it in B tier because it's not a terrible block. It's just not the best block out there, and it's just not terribly useful. Both ball wheel and the tiny landing gear are also going to end up in B tier with the small landing gear. I'm just not going to add them in. Spring is cool. It's kind of like suspension, so I'm going to put it in A tier. I don't even know if I want to put it in A tier. I don't even know where spring belongs. I could put it in B tier, but we'll put it in A tier for now. Why not? Parachute block. I actually really like this block. Again, another thing where it's the only block that does what it does, so obviously it's going to get S tier. It's very creative, it's got a whole lot of moving parts going on there, and probably one of the coolest blocks, like, functionality wise, because everything else, for the most part, just sticks together or, like, rotates, but this one actively, like, has a chute that pops out, it'll, like, blow up into, like, full size. Really cool, and you can actually cut the chute, so I think that's really cool, and I think that's why it deserves S tier. Smoke pipe. Not an S tier, not an A tier, maybe a C tier. Just another situation of, yeah, it's good for design, not terribly useful other than that. Just design-wise, I think it looks cool on some builds, and that's pretty much it. Next up, we have signs. Normal signs, I'm going to put in A tier, because personally, and this is like a personal opinion, I like text better. I think text fits a lot better on builds, especially if you're just trying to like add text to the side of a plane, or if you want to put like a emoji like how I do my Canadian flags on my planes and stuff. You need text because if you use the sign, you got that giant wooden board behind it and it just looks dumb. So that's why the boardless sign is going to go in S tier, and the boarded sign is going to go in A tier. Actually, you know what? I feel like the boarded sign, you know what? Just because, out of spite, I'm going to put the boarded sign all the way down in E tier, because the text sign is so much better. Alright, now we've got the normal seat. This is not a pilot seat, this is not the main pilot seat, it is just your average everyday seat, and it's going to go all the way into F tier. And you're probably wondering, why are you putting it in F tier? Because I think that you might as well just use a pilot seat. In my opinion, I think a pilot seat like, you might as well just throw it down. There's really no reason to use a normal seat, because then with the pilot seat, no matter what seat you're in your build, if you have multiple things, you can always control it, and you don't have to look for, like, one of the pilot seats. So that's why the pilot seat is going to go in S tier. And of course, main pilot seat also has to go in S tier, because you literally cannot build without it. So it's out of all these blocks, it is single-handedly the most necessary block in the game. Alright, now we got cameras. Again, broken. Absolutely insane block used for motor locking, camera locking, which I know nothing about, but I have heard about. Apparently that's insane. Yeah, cameras, really good. You can use them for just so many different things, for building, for motor locking, for camera locking, for using them as actual cameras for once. They're just a really, really, really good block. Trapdoor. They're fine. I wish they looked a little bit better, or functioned a little bit better, or if maybe they were a little bit bigger for some builds, but like they're okay. I guess I can put them in B tier. They're not my favorite block, but like they do serve a purpose, I guess. So yeah, B tier it is. And next up we have the horn. There's only 2 reasons you should ever use the horn. One, if you're using it for a flight stick in a plane or a helicopter or something, or if you're actually using it as a horn. Other than that, I don't know why you would use this. I've seen it used in really good ways, but for the most part, it's just going to go into E tier. There's just not enough uses for it. I think it's a cool block in its own right, but just not the most useful one that we've got. Okay, so I am also missing a few blocks from the winter event, as well as I do not have the speaker game pass. So what we're going to do is we're going to build our own speaker. Let's just take a half ball, and let's paint this to black, and materials, fabric. There we go. Okay, speaker is going to go into S tier, because obviously you can put whatever kind of music, sound effects, pretty much anything you want that's in the Roblox library into the speaker. Super useful. It is locked behind a game pass, which kind of sucks, especially if you don't have Robux, but if you do have the Robux to spend, it really adds to like realism, especially if you're building like something like a helicopter. It can add those like rotor blades chopping through the air. It sounds really cool, and you can also put Rickroll songs and stuff, and meme songs if you just want to troll your friends or possibly YouTubers, so there's also that. Boom, firework launcher. Yeah, obviously belongs in S tier, probably one of the better PvP weapons out there. It does a lot of damage. It doesn't go very far from what I've seen, but when it hits, it's pretty destructive, and you can actually aim it really well. So yeah, so there we go guys, there is my tier list. I think, yeah, it is exactly what I thought it would be. There's a lot of good blocks in this game. Only a few blocks that I would consider just absolute garbage. For the most part, things in this game are there for a reason, and they're really good. Let me know down in the comments below, is there things that you disagree with? I'm sure there's a lot of things that you guys probably disagree with, or other uses that I don't know about for certain blocks that would probably boost them up a tier or 2, or even take them up to S tier. I don't know. But yeah, this is my Plain Crazy block tier list. Go out, make your own. Let me know, what do you think belongs in S tier? I think I've got a good selection of things that belong there, but maybe I missed out on a few, or haven't understood the potential of some of them. But anyways guys, that's really all I've got for this video, so hey, if you guys liked this video, feel free to give it a like, comment, and subscribe. As always guys, it's Dragon Platinum, signing out. Peace out guys. Bye.